Good. So we've been trying, as it were, during the week to try and find a kind of anchor point for some things, and I want to share with you. I was going to maybe speak in the light of the Remembrance Day thing, but I think that what I want to share with you this morning has relevance to that too. So if you've got a Bible, if it's on your phone and you want to follow this along, I'm going to just speak out of a story. It's a really, really well-known Jesus story. And this particular story has definitely featured in at least one meeting of leaders this week already. It's Mark chapter 4, 35 to 41. As you can see here, I've simply called it Storm. So let me read to you and then we'll see what it might say to us. That day when evening came, Jesus said to his disciples, "Let's go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. So the other side, they were on one side of the lake of Galilee and then they were heading for the other. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him up and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to the disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have so little faith, or still have no faith?" They were terrified and asked each other a really good question. Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him. So, you may know that story very well, and if you've been a Jesus follower for a while, you probably do. It may be new to you, but it's as with all stories, it has this resonance, and it has a resonance, I suppose, depending on our situation. And so I think it really does follow on from where James was leading us in the world that we live in. There's the storminess of the world that we live in. We live in uncertain times. We're not quite sure how the election results in America are going to affect the global situation. We don't know how wars and rumors of wars are going to work out. We don't know whether things are going to escalate in certain parts of the world. We don't know whether things are going to kick off in other parts of the world, and so it goes on. And for us, as citizens of this world that God created, of course we care about that. That's a kind of stormy situation. And on this Remembrance Sunday, that's definitely relevant. Maybe for us, on the other hand, very personally. Maybe this is a message for the moment for you because of something that's going on in your life, something that has a resonance in terms of, you could say, well, actually that word on the screen there definitely describes me right now, or my family, or my situation. So maybe actually all other noise is drowned out by where you are in your life right now, and maybe it's stormy. Or maybe, as I set up there, it's to do with our own church situation as well, relevant to all sorts of situations. And allow God by his Spirit to apply it to you, depending on that. I think the way I would like to just very, very simply tease this open, because in many ways it just speaks for itself. There are three phases to the story. It's before, during, and after, isn't it? As you look at it, before, during and after, before the storm, during the storm, and after the storm. So let's go with this. Before. It's a nice picture, the before picture. It kind of, if you look at it, Jesus has done his thing. Crowds have come to listen to him. He's done all sorts of things that have helped all sorts of people. It's coming towards the end of the day. Jesus is tired, but happy tired, if you know what I mean. Satisfied, tired, and the admiring disciples feel something of the same. So they decide that what they'll do is they'll get in the boat, because some of them at least are really experienced fishermen. And so they get in the boat and they decide they're going to go to the other side of the lake. And I wonder what it would have been like on the boat. Well, there would have been a bit of a chit-chat. Wow, great crowd today. Did you see that guy? He honestly, I kid you not, he was brought by his friends carrying him, and he left on his own 2 feet. It was astounding. So chit-chat maybe was going on, at least in the first part of the boat journey. And then eventually, I think as the sun was beginning to set a little bit, maybe it sort of descended into companionable silence. So they're all involved in their own thoughts, which of course left Jesus to have a snooze. So it's a nice scene. And actually, it gives little details as well. It says that there were other boats around them. And so, the sun was setting, the sea was blue, and there were other little boats bobbing around them, and a few shouts from boats and kind of all that sort of thing. A really lovely, lovely scene. And hopefully there are days like that in our lives. God knows we'd like every single day and every single season of our life to be a bit like that. Well, of course, there are the challenges of the day. We all get tired. We all kind of get towards mid-afternoon and wonder what we're going to eat tonight for dinner. There are those kind of dilemmas that carry on. And, of course, there are other challenges that we have. But largely speaking, it's a beautiful sunset kind of day. And we need to be happy in those days. We need to know that God is in those days. We need to know that Jesus is well and truly present in those days. Days when we feel that we're in control. Days when we notice and appreciate others around us. Days when, even in our busyness, as I say, Jesus is with us. But there are days that are different, aren't there? And this is part and parcel of our lives. It's a picture, isn't it? It's written as a fact, by the way, all of this. It's not just a little fairy tale. This is an example of the living Jesus in history. But here's the thing. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. And apparently on the Lake Galilee, this is the sort of thing that happens. It's because of the hills and the weather conditions, etc. But it's quite possible that one minute you're floating around, bobbing around, loving the scenery, and the next minute you're sensing that, hang on a minute, there's a really strong wind blowing up here. Wait a minute, it's not just a wind, it's a fierce wind. Wait a minute, the waves are beginning to build here. Wait a minute, this is really serious. This is a storm. We're out in the middle of this lake now in a storm. And actually, we can't see any of the other boats, and we can only just about see land. And should we go back? What should we do? Shall we abandon ship? Shall we try to get to the other side? Is there another place we could go? And so it goes on. It's sudden, violent, serious storm. And it is a good picture, isn't it? Well, when I say good, it's not a good picture, it's accurate. It's not good. Because in life, it often happens like that. It's not just the ferocity of a storm sometimes in our lives. It's the suddenness of it all. It's when darkness descends as you read the letter or crunch the numbers and horror overcomes you. It's when the hurricane hits through a phone call or a conversation that you did not expect that, or a sudden realization as you wake up in the middle of the night and you put two and two together and you see, oh my goodness, I understand now. Or it's the totally unexpected event. And I know if I was to go around the room, knowing your lives at least some way, that there are many examples of that. And so in that storm moment, you most definitely don't feel in control. What you are is storm-struck, swamped, and wave after wave hits you. And that's the thing about this picture. It's, if you're trying to get an idea in your head of a film version of this, it would be the wind, of course, but there would be a moment when the boat hits the bottom, and then coming across is another wave, and you brace yourself for the other wave, and the wave hits, and you look around and say, okay, we're just about afloat still. And that's how it can feel too. It's wave after wave after wave. And so we could spin that out a little bit, but in that moment, honestly, at times at least, it feels like Jesus has gone to sleep. And maybe you're trying to shake him awake, and you find yourself shouting stuff like that. And of course, there's the sound of the storm, and so you have to shout over the storm, and sometimes that's the right thing to do. You shout over the storm. But this is what the story tells us. At least some of them were shouting as they're shaking him awake, and say, don't you care if we drown? Maybe other words you'd use in your particular storm. And they can be very extreme. Well, we're only human, aren't we? Actually, that's the point. We're human. And we're on this side of a new heaven and earth when everything will be resolved. But meanwhile, we're involved in this stormy business of life. And we're human because we react and we feel and we fear and we wonder. And we acknowledge this morning that storms hit us all from time to time. We said we really like the first part of the story. We like the before, certainly. But we have to acknowledge that we're human and we suffer, we find the unexpected hit us. We believe utterly in a God who loves us. We believe in the presence of Jesus, but that doesn't stop it, does it? Does it? Situations overwhelm us. And here's the thing, even experienced sailors get swamped. That's one of the really scary bits about this story. There's a bunch of very experienced fishermen trying to chart the course of the boat, but nevertheless, the storm hits. Now, I noticed something here, and you may feel this is a little pushing it a little bit, but I maybe felt that actually we know that what Jesus says next and so on, but actually I think the only human part of it is not, when we say something like we're only human, it usually means, oh, well, we're weak. We're kind of, oh yeah, we're only human. Actually, I think if you just move the only bit out and say, well, we're human, there's something powerful in that, because that's how God has created us. God has created us as human beings. And he's created us as beings who are very, very resourceful. Don't jump to the end of a bit of the story yet, but I wonder what was going on as they were shouting, "Don't you care if we drown?" Maybe there was stuff they were trying. The storm, certainly anyone else like Jesus who had been dozing was woken up. I'm absolutely sure, apart from Jesus, everyone else on the boat was fully awake and wondering, okay, so what do we do now? It gets the adrenaline pumping, these storm situations. It should get us issuing shouty prayers to God, rather than, well, yes, Lord, don't you care if we drown? Sort of prayers. It also, I think, gets gifts and skills and ideas and resources cracked open and risks taken. You know, when the boat is threatened, there's some stuff potentially you do that you wouldn't otherwise do when it's kind of the before bit of the story, if you understand what I mean. It gets us all reaching for a bucket and gets us all bailing, or at least it should do that. And I think also sorry, I forgot to illustrate that. It also gets us to the point, hopefully very quickly, that there is a little time for us to shout at Jesus, but there is no time for us to shout at each other. Peter, why didn't you say that you heard from Eric that there might be a storm on the lake this evening? I heard a rumor there was you should have known that. Why, you know, and that is the last thing on earth that's needed on the boat. Definitely shout to Jesus individually and together. But there's no time to shout at each other. There's only time to grab a bucket and start bailing. Start seeing what can be done. Start seeing what we can do about this. What do people that we know might be able to do, etc., etc. Before, during, okay, here's after. After is also glorious, isn't it? I mean, literally glorious. This is basically how after goes. Then he, Jesus, got up, stretched, looked around him, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. Well, we want this, don't we? Come on, I need a bit of feedback here. We want this. That's what we want. We're only human. Sorry, we're human, made in the image of God. God has made us to want this. And so we need to pray for this. We must believe for this. We need to see, and this is important, that Jesus is present before, during, and after this whole thing. He is. He might not be doing what we want him to do when he does it, when we want him to do it. We might not be quite sure why he's sleeping in this situation, or that's what it feels like, or so on and so forth. Why? Jesus, back on land, I don't know that they would have dared say this, but I bet Peter was thinking this. Hang on a minute. You can control the wind and the waves. So why did you allow the storm in the first place? It would be much less stressful if we just got to the other side. We're all exhausted before this. Now, James has got pain shooting down his arm. Why? Anyway, thanks for saving us. But it is what we want. And there's still things to ask around it, but we want the peace. Jesus is present. We want the peace. We want the calm. We want to be able to see the shore clearly again. But right now, that's where we're at. Encourage each other this week, and as these weeks go on with stories from the other side, or stories from before the storm hit, and stories of how God has got us through the storms, to encourage each other. It's really important. One of the things in the trenches that got some soldiers through was these encouraging stories of how we can get through this. And for some at least, that happened. So let's be close to Jesus on behalf of each other. Does that make sense? Because we've got encouraging to do. Whether it's back to the beginning, whether it's that we're worried about the world, we're worried about our world, or we're worried about our church. Stories of faith and encouragement would be a good thing. But Jesus is present. Before, during, and after. Why don't we stand together? Band, why don't you get ready to roll? Let's pray. What I want to do is I'm going to pray, and then I'm going to pause. And if there's anyone else who wants to pray for us, be brave. You don't have to use a brilliant prayer. Help would be a good prayer, or anything in between help and something else. That's good. But I'm just going to give us opportunity in a moment for one or two of us to pray. And then we're going to use a song prayer to finish off. So let's be quiet. I'll pray, then I'll give you a chance. Jesus, Son of the living God, have mercy on us. Lord, we want you to pronounce peace over the storms, over our very stormy world, our lives, and right now, our very, very stormy church world. Lord, we believe with all our hearts that you know and that you care. Hear our prayers.